Good morning, everyone. The E12 Conference Committee will come to order. It is May 10, 2013. Today we have 5 items posted on the agenda, and the first is all-day kindergarten. As we noted yesterday, each of us has strong support for all-day kindergarten. I believe the governor and his proposal would have funded it for accessibility for persons at poverty at about $40 million. We have in the Senate bill $130 million. With the pupil weightings in the House, it's $110 million. It's a strong commitment to all-day K. We mentioned on pupil weights that it's an issue that perhaps we'll get greater clarity as we get information on targets and how that all plays into the mix. So We do have a couple of differences besides the pupil weighting issue, the 20 million, and then how we account for half day. The House has the provision for providing for, I believe, 1.2 million in lease levy, which in recognition for the space needs for those districts, and actually we had testimony pointing that out as well. There was also an amendment that we put on the floor. Senator Westrom, I believe, offered, and I believe it's in Article 3, Section 4, and I'm going to ask the School Board Association, Mr. Schneiderwind, perhaps to address us on it. And the issue had to do, what if a parent, where there's an all-day offering, would like to have the option of half-day, and then perhaps there would have to be that requirement that that option would be available for the parent that wants to have half-day. I think that's the spirit of it, and we said that we would at least put that out there for conferees to consider, and if Mr. Schneiderwind's available, I'd like him to address the impact as to what that would mean for school boards, because the whole program is optional for the district for all-day K, but if you did have all-day K with the language we had here, you'd have to have a half-day option available. So if the MSBA is here to address, okay, well, I believe they'll be here shortly on that. But other than that, I wanted to point out those items, and welcome, Mr. Schneiderwind. Perhaps you had the feedback as you were approaching regarding the amendment that we discussed on the Senate floor regarding the option for parents if could a school board provide a half-day option. And it's in Article 3, Section 4 for members, and like your testimony on that.
Right. I'm sorry for the delay, Mr. Chair. My name is Kirk Schneider, and I'm on staff with Minnesota School Boards Association. I think the piece that we were the piece is the second part of that paragraph on the Senate side, 62.5, where it starts with the school district must have a policy to accommodate a parent that wants another option when the district only offers all day, every day. I think that would certainly create an additional requirement for districts. One, there's the policy development that you have with that piece. And secondly is the piece that if districts go into the all-day K proposal, they're going to go in that with their eyes wide open. They're going to look at the facilities, employment, how many teachers they need, and so to create a piece that says we must offer that may result in a parent requesting, 2 or 3 parents requesting a half-day program. And as a result, we would be required to offer that. And I think that would be a piece that doesn't fit for us. I think that just from the ground level, we've heard from many superintendents and board members who have gone down this path already with an all-day program. And they've had parents, especially with the first-time kindergartners, who say, we want a half-day program, we want them closer. We don't think they're ready for a full-day program. And then by the end of the month, they want to go every day, all day with their friends, and if there's some hybrid model that they have. So I think that's the issue for us. I think the point that we need to accommodate a parent that wants this option would certainly require that piece for us. And I think that districts are moving in that direction, and I think most districts want to move in that direction based on the research and the achievement gains that students have had.
Questions of Mr. Schneiderwind? Okay. Yeah. Representative Mariani.
Mr. Chair, and I apologize, Mr. Schneiderwind. I just want to make sure I understand. So MSBA perspective on this is that this is good language, that this is the kind of flexibility that this should have? No. I didn't think so, but I want to make sure that that's very straightforwardly articulated.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we would agree with that. Our assessment is that this would be a problematic, would be additional burden for us for districts that are moving in the direction of an all-day program, and then to have one parent or two parents request a half-day program. Based on this language, that would require us to meet their requests. And if you only have 2 or 3 families who are requesting that, how do you manage that from a school district perspective? Hiring, space issues, it's just very challenging.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Further questions of Mr. Schneiderwin? Okay. And is there anyone else that would like to address the conference committee on all-day K? Yes, Mr. Piccolo.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Eugene Piccolo, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools. We also have a concern about that provision that was just addressed. Many of our schools only have one kindergarten classroom, and if they choose to make it full day, they would be required to create another kindergarten classroom, which would, for many of those schools would be a problem, especially in the rural areas.
Thank you. Additional comments from committee members? Yes, Representative Erdahl, I believe, maybe.
Yes, thank you, Senator Wiger. And just to echo a little bit, I have heard from rural school districts as well that are concerned about the space issue, that they don't have enough classrooms to accommodate the additional students. So just wanted to get on the record by stating that I had heard from schools on this issue.
Further comments from conferees? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Johnson.
A question maybe to you or someone. If we allowed, would a child be truant if the parents took them out of the school at noon or brought them in at noon? Could that be accommodated?
It's my understanding they would not be truant. Actually, we put in a provision saying that if they're in that half-day program, but if they're in a full-day program and are expected to be there, that could raise an additional issue. I think if you're in a full-day program, you're expected to be there. But if legal counsel has a different interpretation, I would yield to that. Okay. Further comments or questions, Representative Mariani?
Mr. Chair, and I don't intend for us to get into a long conversation here, but just I have a question because the thought just sort of popped in my mind with the word truant. Is it the legislature's intent here for us to apply notions of truancy to kindergarten students the way we do them through the rest of our K-12 or first grade through 12th grade student? I mean, notions of truancy for me conjures up issues of, involving in extreme cases, local law enforcement, social service, et cetera. And again, this is probably a conversation at another point in a legislative process. But just for kind of quick clarification or understanding of what we're doing here, and perhaps legal counsel on both sides, both houses might help us with that.
Yeah, I believe they're conferring, and generally the truancy issue comes in play for teenagers, and where we have had most of the discussion, compulsory attendance doesn't start till age 7, and so we've made that very clear. But once you are in school, then it would come into play as to whether you are truant or not, and but if there's any additional clarification that's needed, perhaps at an upcoming meeting, we could address that. So we can perhaps get additional clarification on the truancy issue if that's needed. If not, we're going to go next to early learning, mini-minds, and each of us has proposals. We, in the Senate, yes, Representative Marion.
Thank you very much, Senator Wiger. And I guess before we move off the all-day kindergarten, I think it's important to note, too, that what we're talking about here, all-day kindergarten and early childhood education, are going to be the keys to closing that achievement gap. And one thing we know right now is there's about 10,000 students who are right now attending fee-based kindergarten, and by going to all-day, everyday kindergarten, that will save those 10,000 families about $26 million in fees, which is going to be very, very significant. And then I know there's been people that have asked, what year does this start? And all the proposals, our proposals have it starting in the fall of 2014. So just for a little clarification.
Thank you, Representative Marquart. And again, we share an excitement of making that happen. And if there's no further questions at this point, then we'll continue with the early learning.
Mr. Chair, I think
Representative Johnson.
I'd like
Senator Johnson.
Anne Marie could comment on the truancy. In fact, I do believe they are truant. If they have an all-day program and are kept out without reason.
Provisions. Mr. Chair and members, under the compulsory attendance law, once a child is enrolled in a half-day or full-day kindergarten program or other kindergarten programs, they are required to receive instruction, and they would be considered truant if they're not receiving instruction and they've been enrolled. They can be withdrawn, but if they are enrolled, even if they're under the age of 7, would fall under the truancy.
Yeah. And again, they have an option to withdraw. Senator Torres, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for council, I understood, in the provision we have, it says very specifically, if offered or an alternate day program without being truant. The language that we have specifically said without being truant. So do we have a conflict in there, or?
Ms. Butler.
Mr. Chair, and so the language was added because they would be truant if we didn't have that language.
There you go.
That's Okay. the So point now of we're having clear. the language. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, again, this is voluntary. The compulsory attendance doesn't start until age 7. There's been suggestions that it might be before that, but we put in this language in response to testimony that said if a person was in a half-day, went through that option, that they would not be subject to that truancy, and that was to address that situation. Ms. Butler.
Mr. Chair, just to state a bit more accurately, compulsory instruction does start at age 7, but if you're enrolled in kindergarten before age 7, it starts before 7. It starts with enrollment in kindergarten if you choose.
If you choose.
to do that.
Yeah, you're not required to be in kindergarten. We encourage it.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Torres, right?
But if you do enter, then you are required, and then if you take a child out or don't take the child, I think that's where I'm confused, because then there is once you are registered for kindergarten, then the law applies to you.
That's correct. Okay. We'll proceed to early learning, and the Senate has overall a total of $50 million for the biennium, the House $56 million, and the governor, I believe, had proposed $44 million. There are some differences in terms of language, but at this point, I wanted to see if there's anyone that would like to offer testimony regarding the early learning program. Sure. Ms. Holden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and conferees. Nancy Hilden on behalf of Mini Minds, and thank you so much for the opportunity. This is everyone is feeling that we're really poised to do something in a huge way to help get children ready for kindergarten, for that all-day kindergarten that you're discussing. So there are a few differences between the House and Senate language. I would put them in kind of a category of slightly more than technical, but not real controversial differences, and I'd like to just run through those if I may. And Carol Miller from Hennepin County is with me and can answer any questions that come up. So first of all, and I apologize, I'm looking at the April 29th dated article, so I think there has been a new April 30th dated. For some reason, there's some April 29th dated, post-dated, or dated documents up there, and that's what I've been operating. So I'll just go by the line numbers. So first of all, looking at Article 8, both House and Senate versions in different ways tried to accommodate the concern about making sure that we keep data private that is collected both by providers and by the department in order to award scholarships. In discussion with both DHS and with MDE subsequent to this coming forward, it was decided that that's really a duplicative or redundant set of provisions, that there's really protection under MDE and DHS data privacy classifications already. And so the protection sections are really, we believe, not necessary. So just looking at lines 152.20 and 21 on the House side, that could be removed. And then there's a second section, 156. It's on the 5th page of my document. It should be close in yours. So lines 156 through 156.13 through 156.20 on the House side, and then that pairs up with lines 99.17 to 99.21. Again, these are all data privacy, data classification sets of provisions, and we believe they're not necessary. And then just moving through the different subdivisions, I think that might be the easiest way to walk through this. Looking at section...
Yes, Representative Briner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I'm wondering about with the data issue, obviously this was discussed quite extensively on the House floor, and I don't have expertise in this area, but I think it's because of the type of data being actually requested within the language that the consideration came up. And so I'm not totally comfortable simply saying we don't need that data language or additional data language without some conversation on our side, particularly with Representative Mary Liz Holberg, who is our data privacy expert and really wants to look out for the families and students here. And whatever the data provisions are under both departments, I think we'd have to have some clarification about exactly what they were before we could agree to removing these protections. I know that would be a concern on our side.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Breinert. In fact, we, as I said, we've gone through the data that is being collected, and we've concluded that under MDE existing data privacy classifications, the data that is being collected and the class of the families and the families and the providers that would have any access under both DHS and MDE, that data is already classified. And I would say we've met with Matt Gehring, Tim Strom, Lisa Larson. There is one thing, and we'll get to this, where there is some subjective analysis made by the Office of Early Learning in how they determine the awards. And we've we've proposed in an amendment that I hope will be forthcoming to remove that, and that is a concern about just making a subjective decision based on a family's need when you don't really, you would have to gather data and you don't know what that family's need really is or what you're asking for, and so we're striking that. We want it to be a clean test based on family income and based on whether or not they're on a waiting list. So it's a very clean and easy test, so you're not asking the family about other data that I think Representative Holberg would be concerned about.
Representative Mariani.
Mr. Chair, and perhaps you answered, or perhaps the last part is answering my question, but I want to make sure that we go over it carefully, because, the language on 156.14 to 156.15 says, including but not limited to. And that's the heartburn language. And so it seems to me that if all we're doing is collecting data that is consistent with whatever our data privacy laws say can be requested and kept private, then we ought to be explicit, it seems to me, on that point, as opposed to language that says including but not limited to. That to me signals that there's something potentially much bigger than what is currently permitted, if you will, under our data privacy laws.
Mr. Chair.
And welcome, Representative Winkler.
Representative Mariani, that is one of the sections that we actually propose removing.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chair, to Representative Reinert and Representative Mariani, with the deletion of that section, I did visit with Representative Holberg about that, and she said that allayed 95% of her concern, and she intended to communicate with the Department of Education about how they use MARS data in general. And so the only real information, new information that's being included here is the participant, or whether the child is participating in the scholarships program. And so she was interested in learning more about, in general, how that data would be used in the child's future. And so it was kind of a broader question that she was going to address with the Department of Education. But her statement to me was it was 95% resolved by the removal of that section.
Representative Reinert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Winkler, we've had previous conversations about the early scholarship program in terms of accountability language and what we would do with how we would assess success in terms of understanding whether we're preparing students for kindergarten and so forth. So I'd have to review the language again, but how will we be doing that within the confines of the data privacy concerns in terms of getting any type of longitudinal data, on this program in terms of understanding student achievement?
Mr. Chair, Representative Reinert, I cannot discuss with knowledge and detail the mechanics of how it will be done. The amendment that Ms. Hilden referred to does contain some report language in it, and it's my kind of broad brush understanding that the data already available to the Department of Education will allow them to do that assessment.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, in the amendment forthcoming, we hope, there's actually, and this is a very good question, because we need to make sure that we can take who we know is receiving a scholarship, obviously with data protections around who that is, but linking them to kindergarten readiness assessment. Otherwise, this is an exercise that is rather nice, but isn't going to get us what we want to know. And so there is express language, and thank you to Mr. Strom for helping work on that. We are tying, when we're requiring that the MARS system does at least put categories in there so we know this kid has received a scholarship, for how long they've received it, and then their kindergarten readiness. That's private, of course, under already existing MARS data protections, but we will be able to, in aggregate, know how these children are doing based on having received a scholarship.
Okay. Representative Reinert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that does alleviate some of my concerns. It sounds like you're working to address both ends of the issue in terms of data privacy protections, but meaningful data that will help us evaluate or hold the program accountable in terms of our goals of reducing the achievement gap. So, thank you.
Members, I believe there will be an amendment we'll consider perhaps early next week as we look at adopting various portions, and we'll continue. You'll get input from Representative Holberg and other members of civil law stakeholders as needed. Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I may say, the good news is that the MARS data system is already in place, so this is not creating anything new. It already exists. So just really quickly then, moving through, it's Section 3 in the House bill, Section 2 in the Senate side language, and we're starting on the second page here. And we'll just walk quickly through each subdivision. I think that's the easiest way to proceed. So subdivision 1, there's no differences in the House and Senate. Subdivision 2, completely identical. Subdivision 3, identical. Subdivision 4, there's a comma difference between the House and Senate, which I think is probably just a drafting preference. It's on line 97.14 in the Senate side, and I leave it to discretion as to which is preferable. But more importantly, down on the House side, in this subdivision 4, on lines 154.23 and 154.24, there's a very important clause. This is relating to teen parents, and these are the children, and actually it's a twofer, and we spent quite a bit of time talking with DHS, Department of Health, and early child advocates who are very concerned about that 0 to 2 age range. When you have a teen parent who's not getting their young child into care, then you have 2 kids at risk, basically. And so we want to make sure that we capture that teen parent who has a very young child, not a 3 or 4-year-old, which most of this proposal is targeted at. So the clause on line, that I'm talking about is the notwithstanding other provisions of this section. What that allows is for the scholarship to be awarded to a parent who's a teen who has a very young child, a 0 to 2-year-old, who can then use this for going to a quality program, quality rated program. So we would submit that that would be a good, with no other differences, adopting the House side language and then with that determination on the comma. In subdivision 5, we recommend adopting the Senate version. It breaks it down into a parent A and parent B. This is lines 97.2A to 98.5 on the Senate side. There's technical drafting improvement, I'll call it, under lines 97.33 and 97.34 that more closely specifies the sections we're referring to previously. Just a technical issue. But then the Senate brought something forward that the House did not take into account, and this is this average amount of scholarship. And this was important to Senate members. It came up in the dialogue that we had on the Senate side. And a lot of discussion about, we want to get the best bang out of the dollar that's spent. If we put a hard cap in, there are many families that won't be able, and probably the highest risk families that won't be able to take advantage of the scholarship. But we want to make sure that we're not just, sun and the moon to one child and nothing for others. So the language in the Senate side, and this is 98.3 to 98.5, puts in place an attempt to make this average scholarship out to $6,000 per child. That is actually still well under what some full-day, everyday early care is, but not every family needs full-day, everyday care. So we have done a lot of modeling around this, and this $6,000 average is what we believe will meet the needs of every child. So then moving to...
Representative Marquart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hilda, then also, if a child is receiving CCAP, child care assistance, this would go on top of that I mean, let's say the total need is 8,000 and they'd be getting 3,000. The grant would be for, scholarship would be for 5,000?
Right.
Or how would that work?
So we have someone here, Carol Miller, who can speak really in detail about this and who has some good anecdotes. But indeed, if you have a child who's getting some care in one place and there's additional opportunities to serve that child, you could overlay the different funding streams.
Mr. Chair, my name is Carol Miller. I work for Hennepin County, and I have been working with the Mini Minds team. It might be helpful just to know that right now, under the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge grant, there are 4 communities throughout the state that are implementing scholarships that are very similar to what's proposed here. And what we have found with those scholarships so far to date is that, in fact, there are many families who have access to some support, child care assistance, that sort of thing, and are only needing a few $1,000s to make up the difference because their high-quality program is more expensive than the maximum of allowable under CCAP, or there are variations in their eligibility and they just need a little bit more to fill in the blank. On the other hand, we have had families where they need their full costs covered, and that might be because the mother is mentally ill and is in treatment or something like that. And then the third kind of situation is children who are in school-based programs or Head Start, where they have pretty much a set amount of money, and our hope and understanding going forward is that those programs, as they expand slots, would be covering the full cost of care, and that might range from $4,000 to $8,000. But building on their infrastructure they already have available.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Please proceed.
So then moving on to subdivision 6 of both bills, the award of scholarships. This again, there will be some amendment language addressing part of this. So one thing that was raised was that we have to be careful not to be bringing in very subjective factors to use to determine who gets a scholarship. You don't, I think Lisa Larson wisely counseled that we just don't want to be saying, well, this family seems to be, according to me, more needy than this family. So we're proposing removing that. So under the House language, the language we'd recommend getting rid of would be the 155.5 to 155.6, the clause that says, and the needs of the child and that child's family. The similar language on the House side is just the and the needs of the child, found on lines 98 just on line 98.9. So we would propose striking that. In addition, on the House side, Representative Loeffler, I believe, raised an interesting point, which was, you know, we've already got kids on waiting lists, so now we're going to create another waiting list, and how do the kids who are already on a waiting list line up? And so to accommodate that reasonable concern, in the House side, there's an extra clause, not found in the Senate, on 155.4 to 155.5 that adds a determining factor of whether the child's family is on a waiting list for a publicly funded program providing early education or child care services. And again, Carol can speak to the details of that, but there are existing waiting lists in every county for low-income children who need support and families who need that. Moving down, so under this paren A of subdivision 6, with the stricken language we've proposed, we would recommend adopting paren A. Parens B, C, and D are identical in both bills. And then again, on the Senate side, there was consideration after the House had taken up their bill of another issue, which was we want to know a little bit about where these scholarships are going, and are they all just flowing to the metro area? And so this will help us get a snapshot of that. This paren E, only found on the Senate side. The director shall report annually to the legislature on a summary of the geographic distribution of scholarships throughout the state. So we think that's a reasonable addition. Moving on to subdivision 7. There's not any difference. Subdivision 8, no difference. Subdivision 9, identical. Subdivision 10, identical. This subdivision at 11 is the section that we talked about earlier about removing that data. And then subdivision 12, same on both sides. We do have, we have recommended adding language that will come forward in the amendment that asks for an interim report in September of 2014. So that we are starting to see some of this. We want to give the department enough time to have before we ask for a full report. But we do want to see this data. We want to see, are these scholarships getting kids ready? Are they getting kids ready year by year? And we think we have at least a starting basis to do that in 2014.
No, and we strongly agree. It's important to see we're on track.
Yeah. And then the only other section that I'd point out to you that's really tied to the non-money parts of the mini-mines proposal is under, it's on lines, I'm flipping a couple of pages here, so you have to move back. It's for fiscal year, it's section, I don't know, I'm losing my, section 6 in the House bill, section 4 in the Senate. It's line 158.14, starting that on the House side, line 100.15. This was an accommodation for schools and Head Start programs because what we have happening when we start to add a new program like this in, and this is what I make my case for why we need tails too, is if there's no certainty for schools and Head Start and school-based programs that they're going to have funding, they have no way when they're enrolling children to know that scholarship will be there. And so we need to be able to do something to accommodate that. So we've asked for an expedited process for this first fiscal year so that they can actually use the scholarships. It was one of the problems that we've had in this small $6 million implementation of the scholarship so far is that the schools could never, they didn't have the chance to use it necessarily because they were already enrolling kids in March and April, and then the scholarships were not available then. So this language in this section is essentially identical. I mean, there's no substantive difference. But what we're trying to get at is letting the schools and Head Start and other programs have access to funding in an expedited way, especially in that first year of the fiscal year where it's a problem. And again, if we only do this for one biennium, this will be a recurring problem. What we need is some stability in the knowledge that this funding stream will be there so that schools can gear up and be ready.
Thank you.
That's all I've got.
Thank you. Questions? Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Senator Wiger. And just a question of the testifiers. More cynical minds may claim, or have claimed, that the benefits of, say, all-day, everyday kindergarten, early childhood have diminished by the third grade. And by third grade, it's not evident that there are great benefits from this early childhood education. I'd just like your thoughts on that. How would you answer that question?
Mr. Chair, Representative Erdahl, you called for a cynical mind, so I came up to the table. The best answer to that, I think, can be found in testimony from Rob Grunwald from the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank and from Art Rolnick, who were both here to testify in support of the bill in the K-12 committee in the House, and I'm sure in the Senate as well. But they have looked at the full range of studies and conclude differently than the small range of studies that have shown a fade-out effect. But their better argument, I think, is that one of the most important and long-lasting effects of early childhood education is the executive function development that develops among these children. Benefits that last throughout their lifetimes and are not easily measured in third grade reading scores, but things that result over time in sort of the kind of soft skills that people need to be successful in the workplace and successful in life, avoiding the kind of downward spiral that a lot of people who come from very challenged childhoods can end up falling into. And so their testimony is far more informed than mine, but the gist of the testimony is that the fade-out effect by third grade is over-reported and is sort of beside the point, because some of the best benefits from early childhood and some of the best return on the investment from early childhood is the lifelong effects on executive function for the people who participate in high-quality programs.
Senator Stone.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, and I'm sorry I didn't get your last name.
Ms. Miller.
Mr. Chair, Senator Stump, my name is Carol Miller.
No, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Miller. Do we currently have programs available in all of the counties across the state, or is there just pilot projects out there right now?
Ms. Miller.
Mr. Chair, Senator Stump, ultimately the scholarship program is tied to the issue of high quality, and Minnesota has decided that the way that we are measuring that over time is called the Parent-Aware Quality Rating System. And currently, that is under the auspices of the Department of Human Services, and they are rolling it out county by county over the next, I think we have 2 more years to go. However, in every county, in every community, there are programs that would be eligible because of the fact that Head Start programs and school-based programs have already met a pretty high bar and can easily be rated under the quality rating system. So essentially, yes, it is there would be the possibility of a family applying for a scholarship and identifying a high-quality program around the state. Additionally, what's allowed for in this bill is for providers who want to make a commitment to improving their quality. Parents may also take scholarships to those programs who are on the road to that rating, and in the first couple of years, that is allowed under careful monitoring. So that, in those counties, as Parent Aware is rolling out, but yet we don't yet have fully rated programs because it takes a number of months or a year for that to happen, there would be access as to programs that have committed to that rating.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up. If we do have evidence of, the Head Start in each of the counties, wouldn't we be able to look at where the money goes and find out if there's some geographic spread on the program? Already? I would think that, it'd be easy to trace the dollars as to where the dollars go.
Ms. Miller?
Mr. Chair, Senator Stump, I do believe, I'm certain that the Department of Education already knows where children are enrolled in Head Start, where children are enrolled in school-based programs, and how much of the money that's already allocated in the state budget is going to those different parts of the state. Likewise, with child care assistance, that would be another place where money would be identified.
Senator Stone? Thank you. Okay.
Well, my question arises from that paragraph where we were talking about geographic, a report relating to geographic data. And I'm not sure where, maybe, I think it was
98.31.
We should have some idea of, what the where the dollars are going currently, and, you know, it's definitely important when we talk about programs that are statewide, obviously, but I would think there'd be some information available currently on that, too.
Mr. Chair, Senator Stump, if I understand this, reflecting on this clause, I think the idea is, yes, there is information about resources that are already available, but what we know is that they are not sufficient for all of the low-income children who could benefit from a high-quality program. So what this would do is assure that the director and of the Office of Early Learning and the department is reporting on these new scholarships, which involve parent choice around the state, where parents are choosing them geographically, and that gives you indications of two things. One, are they being fairly distributed? And the other is, are there resources appropriately available in terms of both high-quality programs and the scholarship itself in a fair geographic distribution?
Thank you.
We have time for one more question from Representative Breinert, then we need to recess for about 15 minutes. The Senate needs to be together for its annual photo, and then we'll return. So, Representative.
They can Photoshop you.
I look better. Okay. Representative Breinert.
Mr. Chair, actually not a question, but a follow-up to Senator Stump's line of questioning. And as I perceive the importance of looking at the geographic distribution, it's something we won't know until we see how the rollout of the Parent Aware program, and it's really the onus is on Parent Aware in terms of how the information we've gathered from the pilots. And we have really some great information from the pilot sites, and I happen to be in a district that was part of the pilot, so I'm pretty aware of how that's proceeded. But the rollout of that information to other districts will determine whether indeed we're successful in terms of geographic distribution. So we won't know until the program is rolled out further.
Representative Winkler, 30 seconds.
I can do less. Mr. Chair, Senator Stump, it's also important to remember that the 4 pilot sites that link scholarships with Parent Aware are in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the other 2 are Itasca County and the White Earth Reservation. So in testing this out, great care has been taken to make sure that it works in greater Minnesota, particularly rural and very poor areas of the state.
Okay. Members will recess for approximately 15 minutes.